In Part 9, we learned that time is day and night, where each is 12 hours. Together, it's 24, or 2 12s, denoting the witness of divine government. Stephen Jones states 24 is the number of priesthood. Even as the number 12 is the number of governmental perfection, its multiple is the number of priesthood, wherein lies the call to spiritual government. It is a heavenly government of priesthood, rather than a political government of kings. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time, from the presence of the serpent. Following the casting down of the great red dragon in Revelation 12:3, the woman clothed with the sun flies into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time. Earlier in Revelation 12, we read, "Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days." When we compare these 2 passages, it appears that time and times and half a time is synonymous with 1,260 days. What is interesting about the number 1,260 is that 12 is the number of hours in a day, while 60 is the number of minutes in an hour. Is this just a coincidence? No doubt the key word in both of the passages is the word wilderness. As we know, this speaks of the dry places regarding the unclean spirit of a man, our place of testing and humbling. Since the number 40 denotes the wilderness, and 2 signifies the division and witness experienced therein, then the 42 months in Revelation 11:2 and 13:5 are synonymous with the 1,260 days and the time and times and half a time. If time is day and night, then what would times be? Would it be 2 days and 2 nights? Just following simple logic, right? If this perspective is correct, then time and times indicates 3 days and 3 nights. This aligns perfectly with something Jesus said in the context of the unclean spirit of a man. But he answered and said to them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." What does an evil and adulterous generation seek after? A sign. How did Jesus respond to this? That no sign would be given except the sign of the prophet Jonah, which, as described, is 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. In agreement with the word sign, we're told that the 2 great lights, without which we would not have day or night, were given as signs. Remember, the 2 great lights or signs reflect the glory of the light of the 2 covenants, old and new. No wonder then that regarding the woman clothed with the sun, John stated, "Now a great sign appeared in heaven." The word sign is important. Strong's defines this word as an indication, especially ceremonial or supernatural. Regarding the 2 great lights, the word signs is defined as in the sense of appearing, a signal, literal or figurative, as a flag, beacon, monument, omen, prodigy, evidence, etc. When we take time to ponder these definitions, we find they agree. A sign is an indication of something, such as a stop sign indicating that we should stop at an intersection, or more abstractly, that lawlessness is a sign of the times. What's equally fascinating is that the word rendered signs in Genesis 1:14 is the same word used for mark in Genesis 4:15. Here God places a sign on Cain, which I believe typifies the lesser light of the old covenant law of God that resides over the carnal man. This mark in Genesis 4:15 is synonymous with the passages in Revelation 13:16 through 18. Thanks to the deceptiveness of our own hearts, all of us fall under the law of God until such time that we discover its spiritual essence. Time and times, and/or 3 days and 3 nights, aligning with the Lord's discourse in Matthew 12. Are the 3 days and nights literal? Not by any means. I believe time is explained by the following. Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, does not differ at all from a slave, though he is master of all, but is under guardians and stewards until the time appointed by the Father. Even so, we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. But when the fullness of the time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. No doubt, these passages refer to the Lord's coming to the Jews and the lost sheep of the house of Israel almost 2,000 years ago. Makes sense, doesn't it? Since Christ exemplified the new covenant promise and told the woman at the well that salvation is from the Jews? Since God called the light day, and Jesus said that he was the light of the world, wouldn't his ministry to the Jews in Israel not be a day of the Lord? When did God send forth his Son? When the fullness of the time had come. Fullness. This is a 7, which represents the end of a particular cycle of sowing and reaping, where fruit is evident. What follows? 8, a new beginning or the start of a new cycle. And remember, the fruit can be that of the flesh or spirit. In this case, it was the fruit of the flesh, for as the Gospels indicate, the few received, but the many rejected. I believe the coming of Christ to the Jews is reflected in Revelation chapter 12. Think about it. The woman clothed with the sun represents the new covenant promise. The male child she gives birth to is Christ first, followed by the 120 in the upper room on the day of Pentecost. But Christ has the preeminence and remains the firstborn. And what happened when Christ came to the Jews? There was indeed a war in the heavens of men's minds between the Lord and the religious leaders of his day. When Jesus declared that the believing Jews were of their father, the devil, he identified the great red dragon of Revelation 12. After all, it was not the Roman Empire that had a problem with Christ and his followers. It was the religious leaders. When the fullness of the time came, God sent forth his Son. In essence, this was a day and night of the Lord for the Jews in Israel. What followed? Times, or 2 more days and nights? Please consider. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be led captive among all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Based on what Jesus says here, the times of the Gentiles or nations incorporate the fact that Jerusalem will be trampled underfoot by the Gentiles or nations. Let's bring this to the following. Then I was given a measuring rod like a staff, and I was told, "Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship there, but do not measure the court outside the temple." Leave that out, for it is given over to the nations, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. Also, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. Does Luke 21:24 agree with our passages from Revelation? It does. Let's pick this up in the next study.